Do you want your voice to be heard? Do you know that you matter in the scheme of things? The People's Voice, the show where ordinary citizens take center stage as we discuss the biggest stories that affect you and I. With you in mind, we facilitate lively discussions, debates, and interviews on the topics that matter most to you and I, from social justice to economic empowerment, education to healthcare, governance, and more. Tackling tough topics and amplifying your voice. People's Voice, Mondays through Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Join the conversation and make your voice count. The People's Voice. Make your voice count. Join us as we drive into the world of politics through insightful interviews with prominent political figures, both serving and former governors, ministers, senators, legislators, party chieftains, activists, and analysts. Get first-hand information into the decision-making processes that affect our daily lives. Highly engaging one-hour program that brings political discourse into focus.
I am Chukwuma Okoro.
Political Lens, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. Join us.
Good evening and welcome to Political Lens on Voice of the People Television, VOP. I am Chukwuma Okoro. In the next 1 hour or so, we'll be looking at Transparency International ranking of Nigeria as the 140th most corrupt country among 180 other countries. Plus, Atiku, Tambuwal, Imoke, Ningi, others meet Obasanjo behind closed doors, deny discussing 2027. Before we get into these topics, kindly subscribe to our page on YouTube. We are at Voice of the People TV. On other social media platforms, we are at VOP TV Live. Visit our website, www.vop.ng, for other trending stories. You can also be a part of this conversation by calling in or sending WhatsApp messages on the number showing on your screen. The number is 0904-473-2605. Now, let's bring in our guest. We are joined virtually by Mr. Segun Shokpeto. Segun is the chairman of Transparency and Accountability Candor Network. And from Benin, yes, we are joined by Mr. Austin Odile. Mr. Odile is a retired director of the National Orientation Agency, NOA, in Ondo State. Now, let's get into it. The Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI report for 2024, released by Transparency International, ranked Nigeria 140th out of 100 under review by Transparency International. Now, this disparate performance is, however, an improvement of 5 steps better, as Nigeria ranked 145th in the previous year's assessment, that's 2023, and 10 steps better than 2022. Denmark emerged as the least corrupt country with 90 points, with fellow Nordic country Finland coming in second with 88 points, and Singapore in third with 84 points. However, countries that made the most corrupt list in the world were South Sudan, Africa, Somalia, Africa, and Venezuela in Latin America, South America, if you don't mind. Now, it was observed that no African country made the top 10 as it was dominated by European countries. Based on the report, Uganda, Mexico, Madagascar, Iraq, and Cameroon shared the same spot with Nigeria with a total score of 26 points. Speaking at the presentation of the report, Transparency International President Francois Valerian said that corruption impacts the globe negatively and a major threat to climate action. While 32 countries have significantly reduced their corruption levels since 2012, there is still a huge amount of work to be done. 148 countries have stayed stagnant or got worse during the same period. Now, the global average of 43 has also stood still for years, while over 2/3 of countries score below 50, Well, billions of people live in countries where corruption destroys lives and undermines human rights, Valeria said. Meanwhile, the Nigerian presidency has reacted to the report and said that Nigeria's improved record is a bold statement that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is succeeding in the fight against corruption. Oh, well, let me come to you straight, Mr. Segun Shopito. You are very familiar with what you are discussing because you are a transparency and accountability person. So I know that you are very well steeped in the issue of corruption perception index. Now, can you help us understand the fact that Nigeria left 145th and is now on 140th, but in 2022, Nigeria was in, I think, 130. Does that look like an improvement? Is it a good score for Nigeria? 2 years, from 130 to 140. Is it a good score? Let us understand. What do you think? Hello, Segun, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry about that.
Okay, all right, sorry. Good evening, by the way. Good evening.
Good evening.
Please excuse my manners. I'm sorry about that. Good to have you on the show.
You just wanted to jump straight into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm boiling. I want to talk Nigeria.
All right. So I think you're right. I mean, I've been monitoring stuff like this for quite a while now. I'm part of a civil society organization. Primary mandate is actually this very matter: transparency, accountability in public sector in Nigerian society. So I do know a thing or two about it. And one of the things that I'll tell you is it's laughable. I was just laughing listening to how the politicians interpret this, what the spokespeople of the administration, the current administration said. I think that it shows that we lack an appreciation for the things that are important and the things that drive progress in societies around the world. If you look at this corruption perception index and do a correlation between the ranking of the countries on that index and national wealth rankings, whether you want to use GDP, GDP growth rate, GDP in absolute monetary terms, GDP per capita, these are the things that you typically use to measure prosperity of countries. You will find a direct correlation, a direct relationship. The more corrupt a country is, the poorer that country will be, and the poorer the people of that country will be. To find ourselves at ranked 140 out of 180 countries ranked is a shame. The score, our score was 26 out of 100. So if you just want to go very local and base about this, you would say if your child comes back home with a report card out of a possible 100 scores, and your child comes back home with 26, are you going to so the child scored 25 in the last term exams, and now he scored 26 this term? Are you going to start celebrating and patting him on the back and say, oh, this shows that you are improving? 26 over 100. The global average is 33. And the regional average, I think, is about 40. Regional average is 33. Global average is about 40, right? So whether you are comparing us with the regional average, that's region in terms of Africa, or you are comparing us with the global average with the other countries across the world, we have performed very woefully. So, we can't be patting ourselves in the back. We've got to realize that this is a damning report. It has always been, even during the administration of the much touted anti-corruption crusader and the incorruptible leader Muhammad Buhari. We never performed well. Corruption is something that is dealing us. It's got Nigeria pinned in a pinhole, chokehold on the floor, on the canvas in a wrestling contest, and we can't seem to get out of it. So for me, the Tinubu administration cannot possibly say that this is positive in any way whatsoever. This is a damning report. It shows that we are not serious as a country and we have not made any progress whatsoever. And I'm not interested in sounding politically correct this evening. I'm not interested in being balanced. I think sometimes, trying to be balanced in our perspective and wanting to sound okay, you are objective, sometimes prevents us from speaking the truth that so badly needs to be spoken, that so badly needs to be heard by everybody, so that it can awaken our conscience and we can realize how bad the situation is, so that we can ask the questions we need to ask, and demand accountability from the places that we need to demand it from.
Okay. All right then. Thanks very much. You said something that is a bit confusing to me, and I'd like for you to maybe explain further so that I can understand. You said that the lower the index of a particular country, the poorer the people are. In our own case, in 2022, I think we scored 130 over 180. And 2 years later, we are now 140, which means we have moved 10 steps ahead. But if you compare between 2022 and 2024, 25, or 2024, that is the year in assessment, the year in review, we seem to have gone poorer. So what's the correlation between our improvement and our poverty level? Is there some kind of explanation that you have for that?
First of all, we have to be careful not to confuse the score and the rank.
Okay.
Is so it's important to understand how this indicator is arrived at. It's a survey where you ask the Transparency International in cooperation with the United Nations and the World Bank send surveys out across the world, to industry experts and business leaders who are the people that deal with government, right? And they ask them questions across several different spectrums of society, including things like bribery, access to government, abuse of office. It's a perception index, right? So now, if you score 26, the score is from 0 to 100. The higher your score, the better you are doing. So you have said it when you were reading the news. Finland and Denmark, who are typically Scandinavian countries, typically rank very high in these types of indices. They scored 88, right? And we scored 26. That's very low. We scored 25 last year. So we improved by 1 score. But in our ranking, we ranked 140 out of 180. So the ranking needs to be going lower, while the score needs to be going higher. So if we were on 130 2 years ago and we're now on 140, it's worse. We've gotten worse. It's a significant regression from where we were 2 years ago. So our ranking needs to be somewhere in the region of maybe 40 in the world. I'm not, too let me say overly expectant. 40, even 60. In fact, let's just go below 100 in the world. You rank 180 countries. Let's score somewhere. Let's be somewhere on the average, like half. Let's say we scored 90. We're like 90 out of 180 countries ranked.
Okay.
Then we'll be saying we're doing well.
All right, Segun, I'm happy that you said that you are not expecting that we'll do better than this, given what is on ground. Now, if we scored, before we get out of this now and get into other things, if we scored 25 last year, 25 points, and this year we scored 26 points, and last year our ranking was 145, and this year we dropped, more like an improvement to 140. Yet, between last year and this year, Nigerians are poorer. That's the puzzle I was trying to untie.
No, that's a different thing. You see, that correlation cannot be instantaneous and immediate.
Okay.
The linkage is to say that, look, for your country to progress, there has to be transparency, accountability. Funds that are spent will go to the purposes they are spent for, and therefore progress will happen. So what you will see is that if you see a consistent improvement, consistent and significant improvement in your ranking and your score over time, if you look at a 10-year period, for example, you should see a consistent improvement in the wealth and development of that country that is being ranked and measured. That's what I'm saying. It won't happen over a 1-year period or a 2-year period. It's too quick for you to see the impact.
Okay, I think basically now we are talking about a rebound and being sustainable. But let me ask you, the name itself, Corruption Perception Index, perception, How much of that reflects reality? I mean, how could Nigeria and a country like South Sudan score 26 points at par? South Sudan has been at war for over how many years? I mean, because we also look at the other indices that they used to check, some things like rule of law, human rights abuses, external intervention, elite consensus, and all of those things. How could we actually, relate this perception to reality? Because a lot of people find it difficult to understand that a place like Mexico, I mean, with everything that the drug cartels are doing and all of that, and South Sudan has been at war for how many years, will score the same point with 26 with Nigeria. How much of that perception reflects reality?
Look, I think to the extent that the survey is carried out globally, the methodology is clearly defined. There's a lot of rigor that goes into calculating the scores and how it is done, working with international multilateral agencies. I think that we can trust the outcome. However, it's important to note, and they have not made any pretenses about it, it is a perception. And what people in marketing will say is that perception is reality. In many instances, what you are seeing as perception tends to reflect the reality of the situation. So it may not be 100% correct in trying to measure the prevalence of corruption in a country, but how that country is seen by the most important stakeholders to that country is reflected in this indicator. And I think any serious government will take this seriously and try to have deliberate steps, policies, and programs to improve its ranking on this index. All
right, thanks very much, Shegu, for your thoughts. Now let's bring in Mr. Austin Odile. Good evening, Mr. Austin Odile. Good to have you on the show. Hello, Mr. Odile. Please, can you unmute your mic so that I can get your audio feed? Can you unmute yourself?
I've done that.
Very well.
Good evening, my brother.
Good evening. Good to see you again.
It's my pleasure to be with you again.
Big time, big time. Good to have you on the show. Now we are discussing corruption. You are very familiar with what Transparency International did with the ranking that just came out the other day. And they said that Nigeria ranked 140 out of 180 countries. But that looks like an improvement from last year's ranking of 145 to, we dropped, like a better place, 5 steps better by making 40. And our score moved from 25 to 26. Now, you worked for National Orientation Agency of Nigeria. You are part of government, by the way, or you were part of government. How much does this perception, how can I put it now? This perception index, how much does the government believe in all of these indices that is read out by these survey agencies like NBS, like Transparency International, like FSI, Fragile States Index, and all of that? People in government, do they actually take this thing serious when they are rolled out?
Speaking from the political point of view,
okay,
that is the perception of politically exposed persons who are in government, who hold public office. They don't believe that this perception as given by Transparency International.
Okay.
And it is majorly for political expediency. And so other public officers believe rightly in that perception, and the thing hurts, because what we're seeing is not only hurting Nigeria, it hurts beyond Nigeria. Nigerians living in the diaspora, you and I know that before now, and it is still happening, Nigerians are constantly harassed and shamefully disgraced at major international airports across the globe, just because of the fact that an individual is holding or sporting the Nigerian passport. So you understand the magnitude of what is on ground, of what corruption has actually done to the very fabric of this country. So to your question, I would say to the politically exposed persons who hold office, they don't believe in it, because anytime Transparency International comes out with their rankings, and then even government-owned and funded Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, in short, you are aware of what happened in the last quarter of last year. The data statistics as reeled out by the NBS were fiercely disputed, and this got the Director General into stormy waters. So that is just to let you know what happens within and around the corridors of power. But to you and I, who are sitting on the fringes or who are operating from the fringes as citizens, we know that it is hurting, and it is hurting deeply. Because one, corruption is evil. Like the former president said, that if we do not kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. And I think gradually it is succeeding. Not until we do, all of us, like the so should be, will everyone rediscover, reorientate, and take a firm decision to swim out of that ocean of corruption.
Okay.
To embrace, like my co-panelist there said, to embrace transparency and accountability, because these are virtues.
Okay.
Corruption is a vice. Then trust, you talk of trust, you talk of character. These are what makes a nation. If all these virtues are absent, they are missing, definitely something is wrong.
All right. Mr. Odile, thank you very much for your very wonderful takes. Now, let me ask you, you see, the issue of accountability and transparency, and when you say we, you mean Nigerian people, both people and the government. How much responsibility should the government take? And how much responsibility should the people take for the corruption in the land? On whose step will you squarely put it as the reason why we are unable to fight corruption? Is it with the government? Is the problem with the government or the problem with the people?
I did not hear you.
Okay, my question is this. I like the fact that you admitted that Nigerians have to fight corruption. When you say Nigerians, are you talking about the government or are you talking about the people? How much responsibility should the government take and how much responsibility should the people take? Because, there's been this interminable argument. It's endless. When people blame the government will in turn say, oh, you people are the ones aiding corruption and all of that. I mean, people steal from government, come back home, you give them chieftaincy titles, they go to church and give thanksgiving, you give them all sorts of names and all of that. Who should take responsibility for the rot in Nigeria caused by corruption? Is it the people or the government?
All of us are involved. All of us are guilty of that offense, whether you are in or outside government. Let me tell you. Like they say, there's a proverb. Not all proverbs are actually true, or the reality of the perception. Like my co-panelist there said, that the fish gets to rotting from the head, which is very, very true. A fact. But in the Nigerian system, for example, if anyone is appointed to public office, the people, their own perception of that appointment is, oh, our own has been appointed to go and partake in the sharing of the national cake. And should that individual decide to play humility, to be humble, to be above board, to be honest, to display high level of integrity, the same people will insult him. That is how low we have sunk. So just as you have bad leaders, you have more followers who are worse than the leaders. I'm telling you, because one, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has bestowed sovereignty on the people. That power, sovereignty resides in the people. Nigeria is over 200, our population is over 200 million. What is the percentage of those who are holding public office, for example? Take out the president, the vice, his ministers, the senators, the House of Reps, the governors, and all the executive, all put together. and those holding public office, they are not up to 10% out of this over 200 million. And yet, why all of us, we just we lament,
Okay.
and then a few aided by overtly corrupt followers urge them on.
So, Mr. Odile, does it look like people have failed in their responsibility to hold leaders to account?
Yes, because of the following reasons.
Okay.
Primordial interest, religion, tribalism, and all whatnot. Because of this, actually, look, let me tell you, some time ago, I think it was in Imo State, a commissioner was suspended for shabbily dressing to attend a state executive council meeting. And the community, in a convoy of buses, not one, not in a convoy of buses with placards,
Okay.
demonstrated to the state capital government house that their son is being victimized. You understand?
Yes,
So,
go ahead, I
and it's
get
the
you.
same thing we have seen high profile persons, individuals who are being investigated and interrogated by EFCC, how they are celebrated, how crowds of supporters accompany them to court hearings, and how when they are granted bail, how lavish, receptions are held and organized for them. These are people who are supposed to support the EFCC to say, oh, what this individual has done, he has dipped his hand in the till, stolen our collective patrimony. So let us join hands. Let us help. Let us join hands.
Okay.
No, because
Go ahead. Land on your thoughts.
so you understand. So when all these are happening, for example, to me, it is the people that has failed, not the government.
All right.
Because one elsewhere, like all the countries, like for example, you have called the South Sudan and the Botswana, Seychelles, and Cape Verde, for example.
Somalia, yes.
Yes, let me even say Somalia they are ahead, but there are three countries in Africa. I'll call them little minions. To hear that when you're talking of corruption, they have done a lot in that regard. Look at Botswana.
All right.
Look at Seychelles.
Okay.
Look at Cape Verde. Now, when you're talking about human and material resources, can you compare these three countries with Nigeria?
Exactly.
So that is the problem.
All right, and thanks very much, Mr. Odile. Now, let's go back to Mr. Segun Shopweto. Mr. Segun, you listened to your co-panelists. You just gave one example here about a certain commissioner who was suspended in Imo State, and the people trooped en masse, to the government house to say, look, our son is being victimized. I also want to bring to your, I want you to recall that when James Ibori left as governor of Delta State, a certain amount of money, a petition was done, and people said, look, someone said, look, a certain amount of money is missing and we can trace it to Ibori. People of Delta State said, no, we are not looking for our money. When the federal government eventually secured and got back the money from overseas and returned it, Delta State government said, no, this is our money, give it back to us. And the federal government said, I thought you said you were not looking for your money. If you factor those 2 points together, I want you to respond to the issue. Segun, you are into transparency and accountability. How much responsibility should Nigerians take for the high level of corruption in this country? Have we been up and doing in holding our leaders to account? In the church, in the community, in our societies, in our neighborhood and everywhere. How much have we done to hold leaders to account, to ensure that we cut back the rampaging evil called corruption? Because it looks like that is the only thing that is keeping us down.
Yeah, that's it's a complicated question to address, because there are several perspectives, there are several angles to it, and there are several factors that affect it. So to answer you straight, first and foremost, is to say, of course, Nigerians have failed, and my colleague, on the call, as rightly said, given all those examples, the examples you also gave, In fact, in addition to what you said about Delta State and their former governor, this gentleman was actually released in Nigeria on charges of money laundering, amongst other things. He was convicted for those same exact crimes in the United Kingdom. He went to jail, served his jail time, returned to Nigeria, and received a hero's welcome. A whole rally was organized for him. I watched it, people danced and rejoiced that their son is back. In other parts of the world, in civilized societies, where people have sense of decency, Ibori would have come back into the country, would have quietly entered his house, not necessarily in shame, but he won't make a grand show of his return. And in that community, he will always be looked with disdain, he would always be looked upon with disdain and some scorn. But he's a hero and a kingmaker today in this same country, and that's our reality. So as a people, the values that we that used to guide us, the values that we held and proudly, stood up to defend, values of honesty, values of the dignity of labor, the importance of hard work, all of those types of things have been eroded systematically and gradually over the last 30 to 40 years, right? So Nigerians have not done very well in holding their leaders to account. There is no doubt about that. However, the reason I say that it's a bit of a complex question to deal with is you also have to look into the why. Why is it so? How did we arrive at that estate? How did we arrive at this point in time where Nigerians actually celebrate corruption? Where, in most societies in Nigeria today, nobody cares about how you made your wealth. Nobody cares. Nobody asks questions. If you suddenly appear today and you move from your house in Agege and you move into Magodo or you move into Ikeja GRA, in a 1 billion naira apartment or a 2 billion naira apartment and start driving a G-Wagon, the people that you left in Agege will come and find you there to celebrate you and see how they can collect their own. Nobody's going to ask you, how did you get this money? So we have a problem where poverty, pauperization, systematic pauperization of the population, weaponization of poverty has resulted in a situation where our core values, the things that hold us together as a society, have been eroded. The sense of right and wrong is gone. It's very difficult. You see people breaking the law brazenly. And when you challenge them, you actually realize that they don't know they're doing the wrong thing. That genuinely they didn't know that it was wrong. Because maybe by virtue of being illiterate and the fact that these things are not highlighted in our communities anymore as being bad, the sense of right and wrong is gone. So we can say Nigerians are not doing well in terms of holding their leaders accountable, doing the things that need to be done to ensure that people do the right thing. But I think it's because they have been attacked systematically. The military government, especially the government of President in quotes Ibrahim Babangida, who is the grandfather, in my opinion, of corruption in of modern day Nigeria, who created the settlement culture and actually made corruption a systematic thing in our political circles and in government circles, in the public civil service. People like that have systematically eroded the things that would have ensured that Nigerians can stand up proud and say, I don't have money, but I have my name.
All right.
That is no longer the case.
Okay, thanks very much, Shegu. It's curious how a lot of people, trace the issue of modern day corruption in Nigeria to Babangida. One of the reasons why the 5 majors struck on January 15, 1966 was because, according to them, there was widespread corruption in the country. So, how come between 66 and 1984 that Babangida became the president or the head of state? What happened? Were we innocent? Were we saints in Nigeria? And after that, what have we become?
So you
recall what happened?
I do remember.
You recall what happened in the Midwest, where Finance Minister Okotie-Eboh, you know the Okotie-Eboh story, how he was flaunting wealth around in the midst of poverty. Wasn't that corruption? Was Babangida the one in power then?
There is no society anywhere in the world, even in Norway and Sweden and Denmark that you mentioned, who scored 88 on the corruption perception index. They didn't score 100. So there's a reason why they couldn't score 100. There are still corrupt people in those places, right? Okay. But the problem, the reason we link, so corruption has always been a thing in Nigeria. Even before the colonial masters left, were they not corrupt? Was it not corruption that brought them into the country? Was the entire colonial system not built on corruption, right? But the point is, when we now started ruling ourselves, and corruption started rearing its head in government circles, in public office, it was something that at least somebody will still see and say, "Oh, I will perform a coup because there's corruption."
Okay.
Now the problem is with Babangida, corruption became systemic. Corruption became a government policy. Corruption became dispensation of patronage of public, using public funds, became an official policy of state. And that was when, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of observers of our political system, that was when we lost control of this thing.
Okay.
And it has become what it is today. And that's why Babangida continues to get on holy honor.
All right. Thank you very much, Segun Shopito. Now, let's go back to Mr. Odile. Mr. Odile, I want to get your reaction. The Nigerian presidency has reacted to the CP, that's the Transparency International report about Nigeria's ranking, and said that Nigeria's improved record is a bold statement that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is succeeding in the fight against corruption. Can we have your quick reaction to that? In 2 minutes, if you can. Okay, Mr. Odile, I need you to unmute yourself once again.
Like they say, it is better to be late than never.
Okay.
Even if it is 1 point, then at least it is an indication that at least something is being done, and that what we just need to do is to sustain this. Okay. I think that the word there is sustenance, and we should do more, honestly, because if, like I said, the 3 African countries, little minnows are mentioned, if one, they are up there, then definitely we can do better. Okay. We're human beings. What we just need to do is to redirect our steps, reorientate ourselves. Like we say, when I was on the survey, the national orientation, the catch or the mantra is change begins with me. Okay. Because if I'm not changed, there is no way I can change somebody.
All right. So essentially, you agree with the government that this present administration is fighting corruption. And if you recall the case of Betta Edu. Have you heard anything about her again? She's been relieved of her position.
No. Definitely, like I said.
Okay.
Look, you have to start from somewhere.
Okay, from somewhere.
That Betta Edu was even suspended. We had a regime. We had an administration here that even when people were fingered, they were caught, dipping hand in the pot or in the pie. Nothing happened.
Exactly the point. I have a point in mind, a particular point in mind. The national chairman of the ruling party, Ganduje, is still undergoing investigation. Meanwhile, he's the national chairman of the ruling party. Members, people who supervise the National Assembly are people who were governors, and all of them had corruption cases against them, and those things were dropped in or before this administration, and nothing has happened. Nobody's career has been damaged. All of them are still there supervising the affairs of this country. Does that look like a step in the right direction? I'm just asking.
Well, you see, let me tell you. Okay. My friend asked a question, the why. But I want to say now, I believe as the talk progresses,
okay.
Man, you were going to ask, what do we do, or what are the problems actually that are militating against the fight against corruption? Okay. I want to tell you that the major challenge we have in fighting corruption in this country is our legal system, the judiciary.
Okay.
Honestly, you mentioned these persons actually that are holding very critical positions in government, which is very, very true and correct. They are there. But there are cases against them. Okay. Our constitution says an accused is innocent until the contrary proved by competent court of law jurisdiction. That is a fact. So even if you catch somebody red-handed with machete butchering somebody or who has butchered somebody, he's innocent. That is number one. Number two, there are cases of governors, political office holder since 2003 that their cases are being investigated, they are being in court. But you see some technicalities in our legal statutes have actually aided and abetted, corruption.
Okay. So
Look at
sorry, Mr. Odile, we are running out of time and we have another topic that we need to get into. So essentially, judiciary is a problem. It's one of the reasons why we are unable to fight corruption in Nigeria. That is your take. Oh, well, I think we might have to devote more time to this topic because, there's a lot to talk about the issue of corruption. You probably have 1 minute more during the wrap-up so that you can make your final thoughts known to the viewer at home, because we need to get into the second topic of discussion. Thank you very much for your very wonderful thoughts. Now, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar on Monday visited former President Olusegun Obasanjo in Abeokuta. Atiku was accompanied on a visit by former Governor Liyeli Moke of Cross River State, Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State, who also happens to be the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Bauchi Central Senator Abdul Ningi, among other political personalities. Now, the meeting held behind closed doors and did not allow journalists in, so the agenda of the meeting remains unknown. But political pundits say that the meeting may not be unconnected with 2027, where former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has said several times that he has not shelved his presidential ambition. However, Atiku has denied that the meeting was convened with 2027 in mind. Recall that Atiku Abubakar, former governor of Kaduna State Nasiru El-Rufai, former governor of River State Rotimi Amechi, former governor of Ekiti State John Kayode Fayemi, and others had gathered at the Democracy and Leadership event in Abuja, where they had individually criticized the ruling APC, with El-Rufai saying categorically that APC has lost direction. Meanwhile, the ruling All Progressives Congress has said that a possible alliance between former President Obasanjo and his vice, Atiku Abubakar, poses no threat to APC in 2027 general election. Oh well, are these gatherings genuinely looking for ways to improve governance, or is it another attempt for power grab by desperate politicians? Let me stay with you, Mr. Odile. I want us to talk a little bit of politics. Now, Atiku Abubakar led a group of people, former governors, I mentioned their names, to visit former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And you know that there is no love lost between the two of them. All of a sudden, it looks like strange bedfellows are beginning to congregate. Sometime in Abuja, somewhere during a leadership conference, you had the likes of Atiku Abubakar, PDP, Nasir Rufai, APC, Kayode Fayemi, APC, Rotimi Amechi, APC, and all of them, in cahoots, they said, look, these things have to stop. Nigeria is going in the wrong direction. Does it look like we are going to witness another mega party like APC was bettered in 2013 to take over or to try to wrestle power from the APC in 2027? Is that what it's looking like?
I think that is it. That is what we're about to witness from the body language of all these fellows you have mentioned. I think that is what they are thinking. You see, let me tell you, let me liken the life of an average politician in Nigeria to that of a fish. When you remove a fish from the river and put it on the land, what happens? Can it survive? When a politician is out of power, he is powerless. He is irrelevant. So they crave relevance because they crave power, authority, because they want to remain relevant in the scheme of things. That is one. And since 1999, even in the Second Republic, for example, when it is getting a year or 2 years before a major general election, there are alliances, realliances, shifting of tectonic plates. New bridges are built.
Okay.
Reaching out to persons, you understand, whether they have the same ideology, the same principles, the same parties or not, it does not matter.
Okay.
Like they say in international diplomacy, no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, but permanent interest. But this one, there is a common enemy, according to them.
Okay.
And then they have a permanent interest.
All right.
And that interest is to ensure that come 2027, they are back to power. They wrest power from the ruling party.
Exactly my point.
And don't forget
Mr. Odile.
that, like
exactly
in the,
my point.
like in the
This
European
power
League,
that they want to wrest from
Yeah.
the APC, is it for the sake of power, or is it going to be self-serving? Because these are people who had been in government and we didn't see anything from them. So
I brought that. I said it. That was my opening statement. It is self-serving. It is self-serving. It is not going to serve any national interest.
Okay.
It is not going to be in the interest of the country. I want to tell you that, look, if peradventure in 2027 this group of persons are able to form or come together, form a party, and then it is registered in this election like APC did in 2015, and the rest power, we are not going to see any change.
Okay.
And that is the truth.
All right.
We are not going. Look, there will be no change.
Okay. All right.
So it is
self-serving. We are out of time. I will need you to take 1 minute to put together your concluding thoughts on the first and the second topic. Please, 1 minute.
Okay. I think for the first topic we dealt with, the issue of corruption, we need to do better. We need to change our mindset that holding public office is a way of amassing wealth. That is number one. We need to change that mindset. It is negative.
All right.
Number two, we need to drop all our primordial interest, sectional interest, and see ourselves as Nigerians, that we want the best for Nigeria, and Nigeria to be mentioned in positive, tones across the globe.
All right.
And then for the second one, well, what matters is whatever is going to happen. Nigeria is our country. Whether politicians, those who are in power now, those who are attempting to wrest power in 2027, should have it at the back of their mind. And Nigeria is our country. We don't have any other country. That Nigeria cannot remain like this.
Okay.
We need to move Nigeria forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Odile. Thank you very much for coming to the show. Now, let me come to you, Mr. Segun Shopito. I would like for you to chime in on the gathering of Atiku Abubakar and the visit they made to Obasanjo. What do you think? What's cooking? Can you help us understand what is cooking? And is there a possibility that the event or the acts of 2013 could be reenacted in Nigeria before 2027? Is there a possibility that could happen, considering the fact that the man in power today is someone who is very well steeped in politics and strategy, as Nigerians have always said and known?
I think obviously it is about 2027. Let's not forget that those elections are now exactly 2 years away. 2 years. So by this time next year, we're full-scale electioneering cycle again. So of course the politicians who never slept anyway after 2023 are now fully, negotiating and just having all their discussions and what have you. Now, I think that Nigerians know better now. I think 2023 elections showed us that especially young Nigerians are tired. The outcome of that election may have knocked the wind out of some of their sails, but I think that a reenaction of 2023 is likely in 2027. And I believe that a lot of Nigerian young people understand that neither Atiku Abubakar nor Obasanjo nor any of the other characters that gather together can absolve them of the blame of how we arrived at this sorry state that we're in today. And they will not be interested in aligning behind any one of these people. So let's just watch how the political events unfold. I know that there is a quest as we speak now, for example, amongst those ones that call themselves the obedient. They're looking for a platform because Labour Party seems to be, neither here nor there. There is a definite and deliberate quest to look for a place where that energy can be focused behind again. That meeting that they're having, they should continue to have their own meetings. As far as I'm concerned, that meeting is not about Nigeria. It's about the vested interests that have held Nigeria where it has been for as long as it has been. And
thank you very much. Please, can you use 30 minutes to put together your concluding thoughts, first and second topic, if it's possible?
So for the second one that I just spoke about now, I think that Nigerians should just understand that our salvation is in our own hands, and we've got to stand up and say no more. And when we do, we will take Nigeria back from these people who have held us down for as long as they have. On the first one, talking about corruption, my rounding up thoughts are very simple. There is no way that corruption can be fixed if you don't start from the head. it is whatever happens from the top, everything, according to John Maxwell, rises and falls on leadership.
Okay.
So if you get a leader who leads by example, with the question of living a Spartan life, living a life that is devoid of corruption, living a life that is devoid of vested interest, of nepotism, all of the definitions of corruption, you will find that without too much effort, it will cascade down the leadership ladders until it gets to the last man, the petrol attendant, in the filling station. So for me, it has to start from the top. If we do not signal from the top, you can do as much as you want.
Okay.
Judiciary will be corrupt, legislature will be corrupt, executive will be corrupt, the state governments will be corrupt, local governments will be corrupt. The leader of the country must signal which direction we want to go as a country by his actions, not by his words.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Segun Soputo. Now, this is where we end the show. We've been speaking with two gentlemen, Mr. Segun Soputo, who is the chairman, Transparency and Accountability Candor Network. Thanks for coming to the show, Segun. We also had Mr. Austin Odile, who is a former director of NOA from Edo State. Now, Political Lens returns same time tomorrow at 6 p.m. Please do well to join us. I am Chukwuma Okoro. Good evening and enjoy the rest of your evening. And bye for now.